My name is Sophia Carter, and I'm 24 years old. 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew exactly where I'd be spending Christmas this year. I'd already started mentally planning the gifts I'd bring, the stories I'd share, and which pajamas I'd pack for our traditional Christmas morning routine. But sometimes life has a twisted sense of humor, because while I was daydreaming about hot cocoa and family game nights, my entire family was secretly planning the most elaborate Christmas celebration of our lives in a group chat that somehow forgot to include me. What happened next turned my deepest hurt into the most incredible plot twist that left my family absolutely speechless and changed everything about how I see my own worth. This isn't just about being left out of Christmas plans. This is about discovering that sometimes when people close the door on you, the universe opens a window to something you never could have imagined. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Now, let me take you back to where this all began, because understanding my family means understanding why this hurt cut so incredibly deep. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in one of those neighborhoods where everyone knows everyone, and Friday night football games are still the social event of the week. Our house sat on Maple Street, with the big front porch that my mom decorated differently for every season, and the backyard where we'd have barbecues that somehow always turned into neighborhood gatherings. My parents, David and Linda Carter, both work as high school teachers. Dad teaches history and coaches varsity basketball, while Mom runs the English department and directs the school's theater productions. They raised my older brother Michael, my younger sister Emma, and me with this unshakable belief that family comes first, always. Michael is 27 now, working as a software developer for a major tech company in downtown Minneapolis. He's always been the steady one, the responsible oldest child who never caused any drama and always made practical decisions. Emma just turned 21 and is finishing her junior year at the University of Minnesota, studying elementary education, so she can follow in our parents' footsteps. She's the baby of the family, the one who could charm her way out of any trouble, and somehow always managed to be everyone's favorite without even trying. Then there's me, right in the middle, trying to carve out my own space in a family of educators and rule followers. After college, instead of pursuing the traditional career path everyone expected, I took a job as a content creator and digital marketing specialist for a boutique wellness brand based here in Minneapolis. I manage their social media accounts, create marketing campaigns, and develop content strategies that help small businesses connect with their audiences. It's creative, it's unconventional, and it's exactly what I love doing. But in a family where job security and traditional career paths are valued above all else, my choice to work in what they call the internet world has always been met with polite smiles and not-so-subtle suggestions that maybe I should consider something more stable. Our family has always been incredibly close, or at least that's what I believed until 3 weeks ago. We have this group chat called Carter Crew that's been active for the past 4 years, ever since Emma started college, and we needed a way to stay connected across different schedules and locations. The chat is constantly buzzing with everything from Dad's terrible dad jokes to Mom's photos of her latest classroom decorations, Michael sharing articles he thinks we'll find interesting, and Emma sending updates about her college adventures. I've always been one of the most active participants in the chat. I'm the one who remembers everyone's important dates, sends good luck messages before big presentations or exams, and shares encouraging memes when someone's having a tough day. When Michael was going through a difficult breakup last year, I was the sister who showed up at his apartment with ice cream and stayed up until 2 a.m. listening to him vent. When Emma was stressed about her midterms, I drove 3 hours to campus just to bring her favorite homemade cookies and give her a pep talk. Being the supportive middle child, the one who keeps everyone connected and takes care of the emotional. Labor in our family isn't just what I do, it's who I am. Even after I moved into my own apartment in the uptown neighborhood of Minneapolis, about 20 minutes away from my childhood home, I made sure to maintain our family traditions. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were sacred. I'd show up, every week without fail, usually bringing dessert or flowers, ready to hear about everyone's week and share stories from my own life. During holidays, I was always the first one to start planning, asking what everyone wanted to eat, coordinating schedules, and making sure we had everything we needed for our celebrations. Christmas has always been especially magical in our family. We have this tradition where we spend Christmas Eve at my parents' house, making homemade pizza and watching classic holiday movies until way too late. Christmas morning, we'd all sleep in the same house. Michael and Emma would stay in their old rooms and I'd take the couch, so we could wake up together and open presents around the tree that Mom decorates with ornaments we've been collecting since we were kids. Then we'd spend the day in our pajamas, playing board games, eating way too much food, and just enjoying being together. This tradition meant everything to me. In a world where families drift apart and everyone gets busy with their own lives, we had something special. We had each other, and we had Christmas. But sometime around October, I started noticing subtle changes in our family dynamic that I couldn't quite put my finger on. The changes were small at first, the kind of things you might dismiss as coincidence or temporary stress. Our group chat, which used to be active throughout the day with random thoughts, funny observations, and constant check-ins, became noticeably quieter. My messages, which used to get immediate responses and spark conversations, were getting single emoji reactions or sometimes no response at all. During our Sunday dinners, I began to feel like I was missing pieces of conversations. Someone would reference a story I hadn't heard, or they'd all laugh about something that had apparently happened during the week. But I had no context for what they were talking about. When I'd ask questions, trying to catch up or understand what I'd missed, the responses felt vague and dismissive, like I was interrupting an inside joke that I wasn't part of. The shift became more obvious in November. Michael started dating someone new, a woman named Jennifer who works as a financial advisor at one of the most prestigious firms in Minneapolis. Jennifer comes from what my parents kept calling a good family, meaning old money, country club memberships, and the kind of social connections that open doors in traditional professional circles. Her father owns several successful restaurants throughout the Twin Cities, and her mother sits on the boards of multiple charity organizations that regularly make the society pages of the local newspaper. The first time I met Jennifer was at a Sunday dinner in early November. She arrived wearing a perfectly tailored blazer and carrying a bottle of wine that probably cost more than I spend on groceries in a week. Throughout dinner, she made several comments about my career that felt like polite insults wrapped in concerned questions. She asked if social media marketing was sustainable long-term and wondered aloud whether I'd ever considered transitioning into something more traditional now that I was getting older. When I mentioned a successful campaign I'd just completed for a local yoga studio, she responded with a tight smile and said, "That's nice, but don't you think it's time to start thinking about building something more substantial?" What? Hurt more than Jennifer's obvious disapproval was watching my family's reaction to her comments. Instead of defending my career choices or acknowledging my professional successes, they nodded along politely, as if her concerns were perfectly reasonable. Michael, who used to be proud of my creative work and always asked about my latest projects, suddenly seemed embarrassed by my unconventional career path. Over the following weeks, Jennifer became a regular presence at our family gatherings. And with her came a new set of unspoken expectations about what constituted appropriate conversation, topics, and behavior. My stories about client successes or creative projects were met with polite but brief acknowledgments before the conversation quickly shifted to more suitable topics, like Jennifer's work in finance or her family's latest charity gala. I started feeling like I was being evaluated and found wanting. My apartment, which I'd always been proud of with its eclectic decorations and plants everywhere, suddenly felt bohemian and chaotic when described through Jennifer's lens of interesting choices. My casual dating life, which had never been a source of family drama before, became something that needed to be explained or defended. Even my clothes, my hobbies, and my social circles seemed to be subjects of subtle scrutiny. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The family group chat reflected these changes too. Conversations became more formal and less personal. Instead of the random, authentic sharing that used to characterize our daily communication, messages were carefully crafted and surface level. I'd share something about my day or ask a question about everyone else's lives, and the responses felt polite but distant, like I was talking to acquaintances rather than my own family. By early December, I was feeling increasingly isolated from the people who were supposed to know and love me best. During what would turn out to be my last Sunday dinner before everything fell apart, I tried to bring up Christmas planning. "So, what are we thinking for Christmas this year?" I asked, expecting the usual enthusiastic discussion about food, gifts, and timeline. The response was weird and evasive. Mom said they were still figuring things out, and Dad mentioned that they might try something different this year. Michael and Jennifer exchanged a look that I couldn't interpret, and Emma suddenly became very interested in her phone. The conversation moved on quickly, but I left that dinner with a strange feeling in my stomach, like something important was happening that I wasn't being told about. The group chat stayed unusually quiet for the next few days. Usually, the beginning of December meant daily messages about Christmas preparations, gift ideas, and excitement about our upcoming celebration. Instead, there were occasional messages about work or school, but nothing about the holiday that was rapidly approaching. On December 10th, everything changed. I was at my office working on a holiday marketing campaign for one of my clients when my phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Rachel. Rachel lives in Duluth, about 2.5 hours north of Minneapolis, and we don't talk regularly, but we've always been friendly at family gatherings. Her message was casual and excited. "Hey, Sophia. My mom mentioned that you guys rented that incredible cabin in Breckenridge for Christmas week. She said it looks absolutely gorgeous and that Jennifer found it through her family's connections. I'm so jealous. A white Christmas in Colorado sounds amazing. Are you excited?" My blood turned to ice water. What cabin in Breckenridge? What Christmas week rental? I stared at my phone, reading Rachel's message over and over, trying to make sense of what she was saying. We'd never discussed any trip to Colorado. In fact, we'd barely discussed Christmas plans at all, despite my attempts to bring up the topic. My hands were shaking as I opened our family group chat and scrolled back through weeks of messages, looking for any mention of travel plans, cabin rentals, or Colorado. There was nothing. Absolutely nothing about Christmas plans of any kind, let alone an elaborate week-long vacation to a mountain resort. Panic started rising in my chest as I realized what Rachel's message meant. My family had planned an entire Christmas celebration without me. Not only had they planned it without including me in the discussion, but they'd actively hidden it from me while telling extended family members about their exciting plans. I immediately called Rachel back, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, can you tell me exactly what Aunt Margaret said about our Christmas plans?" Rachel's enthusiastic response made everything worse. "Oh, she was so excited about it. She said your whole family found this luxury cabin in Breckenridge through Jennifer's family connections, and you're all spending a full week there over Christmas." She showed me the photos online. It has this massive stone fireplace and hot tub, and it's right on the slopes. She said Jennifer's parents are coming too, so it's going to be like this big family celebration. I was so jealous that you get to have Christmas in the mountains. Each word felt like a physical blow. Not only had my family planned a Christmas vacation without me, but they'd included Jennifer's parents, people they'd known for less than 3 months, while excluding their own daughter and sister. After I hung up with Rachel, I sat in my office staring at my computer screen, unable to process what I'd just learned. The campaign I was working on suddenly seemed meaningless. How could I focus on creating content about family togetherness and holiday joy when my own family had literally planned their holiday celebration around my absence? I opened Instagram and searched for Jennifer's profile. My heart sank as I scrolled through her recent posts. There, posted just 2 days earlier, was a screenshot of a luxury cabin rental confirmation. The photo showed a stunning mountain lodge with floor-to-ceiling windows surrounded by snow-covered pine trees. The caption read, "Cannot wait for the most magical Christmas week with the Carter family." Michael found the most amazing future in-laws, and spending the holidays in Breckenridge is going to be absolutely perfect. So grateful for new family traditions. The post had dozens of likes and comments from people I recognized. Family friends, people from Michael's work, even some of my parents' colleagues from school. Everyone seemed to know about this Christmas trip except me. I screenshot Jennifer's post and stared at it, trying to understand how this had happened. The rental confirmation was dated 3 weeks earlier, which meant they'd been planning this for almost a month. 3 weeks of family dinners, group chat messages, and casual conversations where no one had mentioned that they were planning to spend Christmas without me. The betrayal felt deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. This wasn't a spontaneous decision or a miscommunication. This was a deliberate, calculated exclusion that had required ongoing deception from every member of my immediate family. I sat in my office for another hour, staring at that Instagram post and trying to decide what to do with the information. Part of me wanted to screenshot it and send it to our family group chat with a simple, "What is this?" But another part of me was too hurt and embarrassed to confront them directly. Finally, I decided I needed to hear the truth from someone in my family. I called Emma first, thinking that my younger sister might be the most likely to give me an honest explanation. The conversation shattered what was left of my heart. "Oh no," Emma said when I asked her directly about the Colorado trip. "Sophia, I feel terrible that you found out this way. So it's true? You're all going to Colorado for Christmas without me?" There was a long pause before Emma continued. "Jennifer found this amazing cabin through her family's connections, and it seemed like such a good opportunity. But there are only 4 bedrooms, and with Jennifer's parents coming to meet everyone. So you chose Jennifer's parents over your own sister?" "It's not like that," Emma said quickly. "It's just Jennifer really wanted her parents to experience a Christmas with our family, and this seemed like the perfect chance for everyone to bond. Michael is probably going to propose to her on the trip, so her parents need to feel like they're part of our family now." The casual way she mentioned Michael's planned proposal felt like another slap. "And no one thought I should be there when my brother proposes to his girlfriend?" Emma's voice got smaller. "Jennifer thought it might be better to keep it intimate. Just immediate family and her parents. She said you might feel uncomfortable since you don't really fit in with their lifestyle, and she didn't want anyone to feel out of place." Each word confirmed my worst fears about how my family now saw me. I wasn't just excluded from Christmas. I was considered incompatible with my own brother's future wife and potentially embarrassing to my family's new social connections. After I hung up with Emma, I called Michael directly. The conversation with my older brother was even more painful because he didn't even try to pretend it wasn't deliberate. "Sophia, I was going to talk to you about this," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Look, Jennifer's family has these connections to this incredible property, and they offered to include Mom and Dad in their Christmas tradition. It's a really big deal for Jennifer that her parents approve of our family." "And you didn't think I was worth including in that approval process?" Michael sighed heavily. "It's not about worth, Soph. It's about fit. Jennifer's family is very traditional, very focused on stability and conventional success. They're trying to get to know our family. And honestly, your career and lifestyle might send the wrong message about our family's values." The words hit me like a physical blow. My own brother was telling me that I was too unconventional, too unstable, too inappropriate to be included in his relationship with his future in-laws. So you decided it was better to just pretend I don't exist? We're not pretending you don't exist. We're just managing the situation. Jennifer thinks it might be better if you establish your own Christmas traditions anyway. You're always talking about being independent and doing things your own way. The gaslighting was almost worse than the exclusion itself. Now, my independence and creativity, things I'd always been proud of, were being used as justification for why I deserved to be left out. My final call was to my parents, and their response crushed whatever hope I had left for understanding or reconciliation. "Sweetheart," Mom said in that carefully controlled voice she uses when she's trying to manage a difficult situation, "we should have handled this better, but we didn't want to hurt your feelings. So instead, you planned an entire Christmas vacation behind my back?" Dad took the phone. "Sophia, Jennifer's family made a very generous offer to include us in their holiday tradition. This is important for Michael's future, and sometimes we have to make sacrifices for family harmony." "What about sacrificing for me? I'm family too." "Of course you are," Mom said, taking the phone back. "But you have to understand, this is about more than just Christmas. This is about Michael's relationship and his future. Jennifer's family is very influential, and their approval matters for his career prospects too." The conversation continued for 20 more minutes, with my parents explaining all the reasons why excluding me was actually the reasonable, mature decision that I should understand and support. They talked about how I was too busy with work anyway, and how I probably wouldn't enjoy the formal, traditional atmosphere that Jennifer's family preferred. They suggested that maybe I could start my own Christmas traditions, and that we could celebrate together when everyone gets back. By the time I hung up, I felt completely hollow. Every person in my immediate family had participated in this deception. Every single one of them had decided that including me in Christmas would be more trouble than it was worth, and that my feelings were acceptable collateral damage for maintaining Jennifer's family's approval. I spent that night sitting on my couch, scrolling through years of Christmas photos on my phone. Pictures of all of us in matching pajamas, opening presents together, laughing around the dinner table. Memories of what I thought was an unbreakable family bond, now revealed to be conditional on my acceptability to my brother's girlfriend's family. The worst part wasn't even the exclusion itself. It was the realization that my family had been lying to me for weeks. Every Sunday dinner where they'd smiled and asked about my week while secretly planning a Christmas celebration without me. Every group chat message where they'd acted like we were still the close family we'd always been, while knowing they were about to leave me behind. As I sat there surrounded by the Christmas decorations I'd already put up in my apartment, planning for a holiday celebration that was never going to happen, I realized I had two choices. I could spend Christmas alone in Minneapolis, feeling sorry for myself and waiting for my family to come back and pretend nothing had happened. Or I could do something completely different, something that honored my own worth instead of accepting their judgment of my value. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. I wasn't going to spend Christmas alone in my apartment, wallowing in self-pity while my family enjoyed their perfect mountain getaway. I wasn't going to wait around hoping they'd realize their mistake and invite me to join them. Instead, I was going to do something that would remind me of my own worth, something that would celebrate who I am, rather than mourning who my family apparently wished I would become. I called in sick to work, which wasn't entirely a lie since I felt emotionally devastated, and spent the morning researching options. At first, I considered traditional alternatives, maybe a Christmas cruise, or a trip to visit college friends in other cities. But those options felt like consolation prizes, ways to fill time rather than truly reclaim my holiday. That's when I remembered something my friend Alicia had mentioned a few weeks earlier. Alicia works in public relations for entertainment companies, and she'd casually mentioned that she was working on a Christmas Eve charity gala in Los Angeles. The event was being hosted by several major entertainment companies to benefit children's literacy programs, and it was going to be attended by actors, musicians, and industry professionals who were spending the holidays in California rather than with their families. The idea seemed completely insane. Fly to Los Angeles alone, attend a charity event where I knew virtually no one, and spend Christmas Eve with strangers in a city I'd only visited once before. It was the opposite of everything my family valued: tradition, stability, predictability, which was exactly why I needed to do it. I called Alicia immediately. "I know this is going to sound crazy," I said, "but do you think there's any way I could get an invitation to that Christmas Eve gala you mentioned?" Alicia was quiet for a moment before responding. "Sophia, are you okay? This doesn't sound like you at all." I gave her the abbreviated version of my family situation, and her response was immediate and fierce. "Oh, hell no. They did not exclude you from Christmas. That's absolutely unacceptable." She paused, and I could hear her typing in the background. "You know what? Yes, I can absolutely get you into this gala. It's exactly what you need right now. The theme is Found Family, celebrating people who create their own support systems and holiday traditions. It's literally perfect for your situation." Within 2 hours, Alicia had secured me an invitation to the Christmas Ever charity gala at the Beverly Hills Hotel. The event was being co-hosted by 3 major entertainment companies, and the guest list included actors, directors, musicians, and industry professionals who were all spending Christmas away from their traditional family celebrations for various reasons. I booked a flight to Los Angeles departing on December 23rd, giving myself 1 day to settle in before the gala. The ticket was expensive, definitely more than I would normally spend on an impulse trip, but something inside me insisted that this was exactly what I needed to do. For once in my life, I was going to prioritize my own emotional needs over being responsible and practical. The 2 days between making this decision and leaving for Los Angeles were surreal. I continued going through the motions of normal life, working on client projects, running errands, responding to text messages from friends. But internally, I felt like I was preparing for something monumental. I researched the charity that the gala was supporting, bought a dress that made me feel confident and beautiful, and tried to prepare myself mentally for stepping completely outside my comfort zone. The hardest part was not telling my family about my plans. Our group chat continued to be sporadically active with surface-level messages about work and weather, but no one mentioned Christmas or travel plans. The silence around their Colorado trip felt deafening, especially knowing that they were all actively participating in the deception. Every casual message from Mom asking how my week was going, or Emma sharing a funny meme, felt like another small betrayal. I found myself screenshotting their messages and staring at them, trying to understand how people who claimed to love me could maintain such an elaborate lie. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. These were the same people who had raised me to value honesty and family loyalty, yet they were demonstrating neither in their treatment of me. Part of me wanted to announce my Los Angeles plans in the group chat to show them that I wasn't going to spend Christmas alone and pathetic while they enjoyed their mountain retreat. But a stronger part of me recognized that sharing my plans would be seeking their validation and attention, which was exactly the pattern I needed to break. This trip wasn't about proving anything to them. It was about proving something to myself. On December 22nd, I finally received a message in our family group chat that acknowledged their travel plans. Mom posted a photo of everyone at the Minneapolis airport with the caption, "Heading out for our Christmas adventure. Love you all." The photo showed Michael and Jennifer looking happy and relaxed, Emma grinning with excitement, and my parents beaming with anticipation. They looked like the perfect family, complete and content without me. The message felt like a final confirmation that I was making the right choice. Instead of responding to the group chat, I simply hearted the message and continued packing for my own adventure. December 23rd dawned cold and gray in Minneapolis. typical winter weather that usually made me grateful for cozy indoor Christmas preparations. Instead, I found myself excited about trading snow and freezing temperatures for California sunshine and palm trees. As I headed to the airport, pulling my suitcase behind me, I felt a mixture of nervousness and anticipation that reminded me of the first day of college, terrifying and thrilling at the same time. The flight to Los Angeles gave me 3 uninterrupted hours to think about what I was doing and why. I'd never traveled alone to a major event where I didn't know anyone. I'd never spent a holiday completely separated from family traditions. I'd never made such an impulsive, expensive decision based purely on emotional needs rather than practical considerations. Everything about this trip was completely outside my normal behavior patterns, which felt both scary and liberating. Landing. At LAX in the late afternoon, I was immediately struck by how different everything felt. The palm trees lining the airport roads, the warm air that required no jacket, the general sense of possibility that seems to permeate Los Angeles. It all felt like entering a completely different world from the one I'd left behind in Minneapolis. I'd booked a room at a boutique hotel in West Hollywood, walking distance from the Beverly Hills Hotel where the gala would be held. The hotel was small and stylish, exactly the kind of place I would have chosen if I were planning a perfect weekend getaway. Checking in felt like the first moment where this crazy plan started to feel real and right, rather than impulsive and terrifying. That evening, I decided to explore the neighborhood around my hotel, rather than staying in my room and overthinking the next day's event. Los Angeles in December felt magical in a completely different way than Christmas in Minneapolis. Instead of twinkling lights on snow-covered houses, there were palm trees wrapped in colorful lights, outdoor restaurant patios filled with people celebrating in warm weather, and a general energy of possibility that I'd never experienced during a Minnesota winter. I found a small restaurant with outdoor seating and ordered dinner, people watching, and trying to soak in the atmosphere. At the table next to me, a group of friends were celebrating one woman's promotion at a talent agency, toasting her success, and talking animatedly about industry projects and creative collaborations. Their conversation was fascinating, completely different from the kinds of professional discussions I was used to hearing in Minneapolis. As I listened to them talk about film projects, marketing campaigns, and creative partnerships, I realized how much I'd been craving this kind of intellectual stimulation. My work in digital marketing was creative and challenging, but I rarely had opportunities to discuss it with people who understood the industry landscape and could offer new perspectives. In Minneapolis, my professional life often felt isolated, something I did but didn't really get to share or explore with others. Sitting there in the warm evening air, surrounded by the energy of people pursuing creative careers and unconventional paths, I started to understand why this trip had felt so necessary. It wasn't just about escaping my family's rejection. It was about connecting with a world that might actually value the parts of myself that my family had decided were problematic. I went to bed that night, feeling more optimistic than I had in weeks. Tomorrow would bring the charity gala, and while I still felt nervous about attending such a high-profile event alone, I also felt excited about the possibility of meeting people who might understand and appreciate who I actually am, rather than who my family thinks I should become. Christmas Eve morning in Los Angeles was absolutely beautiful, sunny and 75 degrees, with clear blue skies that made everything feel possible. I spent the morning exploring Beverly Hills, walking down Rodeo Drive and marveling at the contrast between this glamorous, sun-soaked Christmas Eve and the snowy traditional holiday preparations happening back in Minneapolis and Colorado. Around noon, I treated myself to lunch at a cafe near the Beverly Hills Hotel, partly to scout the location for that evening's event, and partly to continue soaking in the atmosphere of this completely different kind of Christmas celebration. The hotel was gorgeous, exactly the kind of elegant, old Hollywood glamour that I'd only seen in movies. Staff members were already setting up for evening events, and I caught glimpses of beautiful floral arrangements and twinkling lights that promised a magical evening ahead. I spent the afternoon back at my hotel, taking care of the practical preparations for the gala. I'd brought a dress that I absolutely loved, a deep emerald green that complemented my dark hair and made me feel confident and sophisticated. It was fancier than anything I'd typically wear in Minneapolis, but it felt perfect for this new version of myself that was emerging on this trip. As I got ready, I found myself thinking about how different this preparation felt from getting ready for family Christmas celebrations. Instead of choosing clothes that would be comfortable for sitting on the floor, opening presents, or playing games with siblings, I was preparing to look my absolute best for an evening of meeting new people and representing myself as a confident, successful professional. The shift in mindset felt profound and empowering. By 6 p.m., I was ready to leave for the gala. Looking at myself in the hotel mirror, I barely recognized the confident, glamorous woman looking back at me. This wasn't the accommodating middle child who bent over backward to maintain family harmony. This wasn't the sister who accepted being excluded rather than causing drama. This was someone who valued herself enough to create her own magical Christmas experience rather than accepting rejection from people who should have known better. The Beverly Hills Hotel was transformed for the charity gala. The entire ballroom was decorated with elegant Christmas displays that managed to feel both festive and sophisticated. Exactly the kind of celebration I would have designed if I'd been planning my ideal holiday party. The lighting was warm and flattering, the music was perfect background ambiance, and the overall atmosphere felt like stepping into a fairy tale. Walking into that ballroom alone, wearing my beautiful dress, and carrying myself with newly discovered confidence, I felt a thrill of possibility that I'd never experienced before. This was my night, my choice, my adventure. Whatever happened next, I was here because I decided I deserved to be here, not because someone else had included me out of obligation or family loyalty. The event was everything Alicia had promised, and more. The guest list was incredible. Actors I recognized from television shows and movies, musicians whose work I'd been following for years, directors and producers whose projects I admired. But more than the celebrity factor, what struck me was how genuine and interesting everyone seemed to be. The charity being supported focused on providing books and literacy programs to underserved children, and many of the guests had personal connections to the cause. During the cocktail hour, I found myself in fascinating conversations with people who had grown up in difficult circumstances and found salvation through reading, or who had successful careers and wanted to give back to communities that needed support. One conversation particularly stood out. I was standing near the silent auction displays, looking at items being bid on to support the charity, when a woman approached me and complimented my dress. She introduced herself as Maria Santos, a television producer who had grown up in East Los Angeles and was now creating content that highlighted stories from underrepresented communities. We ended up talking for nearly an hour about the power of storytelling, the importance of authentic representation in media, and the challenges of building a creative career while staying true to your values. Maria was fascinated by my background in digital marketing and content creation, and she shared insights about the entertainment industry that were completely new to me. "You know," she said as our conversation was winding down, "you have such a fresh perspective on audience engagement and authentic storytelling. I'm always looking for people who understand how to connect with audiences in genuine ways rather than just pushing products or manufactured content." She handed me her business card and suggested that I reach out to her in the new year to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. The conversation was exactly the kind of professional connection I'd been hoping to make. But more than that, it was validation that my skills and perspective had value in worlds beyond what my family could imagine. As the evening progressed, I found myself in conversation after conversation with people who were interesting, accomplished, and genuinely kind. The energy at the event was completely different from typical Minneapolis social gatherings. People were more direct, more willing to talk about ambitious projects and creative dreams, more focused on what they were building rather than what they were maintaining. Around 9 p.m., as I was standing near the bar getting a drink and taking a moment to absorb everything that was happening, Someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around and nearly dropped my glass. Standing behind me, smiling warmly and looking impossibly handsome in a perfectly tailored navy suit, was Ryan Reynolds. "Excuse me," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Ryan Reynolds. I couldn't help but notice you from across the room. You have this incredible energy, and I was hoping I might introduce myself." For a moment, I was completely speechless. Ryan Reynolds, the actor my entire family had been collectively obsessed with since the first Deadpool movie, was introducing himself to me at a Christmas Eve charity gala in Beverly Hills. The absurdity and perfection of the moment was almost too much to process. "I'm Sophia Carter," I managed to say, shaking his hand and trying to appear more composed than I felt. "It's really nice to meet you." "Sophia Carter," he repeated, as if testing how my name sounded. "What brings you to Los Angeles for Christmas Eve? Are you in the industry?" I explained my background in digital marketing and content creation, mentioning that I was visiting from Minneapolis and had been invited by a friend who worked in public relations. Ryan listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions about my work and sharing his own experiences with social media marketing and brand development. "You know," he said, after we'd been talking for about 10 minutes, "I've been looking for someone with exactly your background. My production company is developing several projects that require really sophisticated audience engagement strategies, and we need someone who understands authentic storytelling in digital spaces." What followed was one of the most surreal conversations of my life. Ryan Reynolds, movie star, producer, marketing genius, was genuinely interested in my professional expertise. He talked about projects his company was developing, challenges they were facing with audience engagement, and creative opportunities that required exactly the kind of skills I'd been developing in Minneapolis. The conversation lasted for over an hour, covering everything from brand development to authentic storytelling to the future of digital marketing and entertainment. Ryan was incredibly intelligent, surprisingly down-to-earth, and genuinely interested in my perspective on industry, trends, and creative strategies. "I have to ask," he said at one point, "what made you decide to spend Christmas Eve at a charity gala in Los Angeles? This seems like a pretty adventurous choice for someone from Minneapolis." I gave him an abbreviated version of my family situation, the exclusion from Christmas plans, the decision to create my own holiday celebration, the desire to connect with people who might appreciate my unconventional choices rather than seeing them as problems to be managed. Ryan's response was immediate and emphatic. "Your family excluded you from Christmas because you're too creative and independent? That's absolutely insane. Those are exactly the qualities that make people interesting and successful." He paused, looking thoughtful. "You know what? I think we should document this moment. This is exactly the kind of story that needs to be shared. Someone choosing to celebrate herself rather than accepting other people's limitations." He pulled out his phone. "Would you mind if we took a photo together? I'd love to share your story with my followers, if you're comfortable with that." The next few minutes felt like a dream. Ryan Reynolds was not only taking photos with me, but he was actively interested in sharing my story as an example of empowerment and self-worth. We took several photos together, some serious, some laughing, all of them capturing what felt like a genuinely magical moment. "What's your Instagram handle?" he asked. "I want to make sure I tag you properly when I post these." As I gave him my social media information, I couldn't help thinking about my family in their Colorado cabin, probably settling in for a traditional Christmas Eve evening, completely unaware that their excluded daughter was having the most extraordinary night of her life with their collective celebrity crush. The irony was absolutely perfect. The same family who had decided I was too unconventional and inappropriate for their Christmas celebration would soon discover that my unconventional choices had led me to exactly the kind of experience they could only dream about. Ryan and I continued talking throughout the evening, joined by several other guests who were fascinated by my story and impressed by my professional background. By the time the gala was winding down around midnight, I had collected business cards from television producers, marketing executives, and creative professionals who were interested in potential collaborations. But more importantly, I had spent Christmas Eve surrounded by people who celebrated my independence and creativity, rather than seeing them as character flaws that needed to be managed or hidden. For the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged, with people who understood and appreciated who I actually am. As I said goodbye to Ryan, he handed me his production company's business card. "I'm serious about wanting to work together," he said. "Have your people call my people after the holidays, and let's set up a meeting to discuss some projects." Walking back to my hotel at nearly 1 a.m. on Christmas morning, still wearing my beautiful dress and carrying business cards from some of the most successful people in entertainment, I felt a sense of completion and empowerment that I'd never experienced before. This Christmas Eve had been everything I'd hoped for and more. A celebration of my own worth, surrounded by people who saw my value rather than my deficiencies. The contrast with my family's traditional Christmas Eve couldn't have been more stark, and for the first time since discovering their deception, I felt genuinely grateful that they had excluded me. If they hadn't pushed me away, I never would have discovered what it felt like to be truly appreciated and celebrated for exactly who I am. Christmas morning in Los Angeles was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I woke up naturally around 9 a.m., with California sunshine streaming through my hotel room windows and the sounds of the city already alive with activity below. There was something surreal about waking up alone in a hotel room on Christmas morning, but instead of feeling lonely or abandoned, I felt incredibly peaceful and content. I ordered room service, something I'd never done on Christmas morning before, and sat on my small balcony overlooking West Hollywood, drinking coffee and reflecting on the previous evening. The whole experience still felt dreamlike. Had I really spent Christmas Eve talking with Ryan Reynolds about professional collaboration opportunities? Had I really networked with television producers and marketing executives who were genuinely interested in my work? Had I really created the most magical Christmas Eve of my life while my family was presumably enjoying their traditional mountain cabin celebration? The business cards I'd collected the night before were stacked neatly on my nightstand, physical proof that the evening had actually happened. I picked up Ryan's production company card and ran my fingers over the embossed lettering, still hardly believing that he'd been serious about wanting to work together. In less than 24 hours, I'd gone from being the family member too inappropriate for Christmas to someone that one of Hollywood's biggest stars wanted to collaborate with professionally. My phone had been charging overnight, and I deliberately avoided checking it since returning to the hotel. Part of me was curious whether my family had posted any updates from their Colorado trip, but a bigger part of me wanted to savor this feeling of independence and self-sufficiency before reconnecting with the outside world. This Christmas morning belonged entirely to me, and I wasn't ready to share it with anyone else's expectations or judgments. Around 10 a.m., I finally picked up my phone to check messages. There were several texts from friends back in Minneapolis, wishing me Merry Christmas, a few work-related emails that could wait until after the holidays, and one message from Alicia asking how the gala had gone. I responded to Alicia first, sending her a brief but enthusiastic summary of the evening and promising to call her with all the details once I was back in Minneapolis. Then I opened Instagram to post about my Christmas Eve experience. I'd taken a few photos at the gala, the beautiful ballroom decorations, the elegant setup, a selfie of me in my green dress looking confident and happy. But the photos I was most excited about sharing were the ones Ryan had taken of us together. Looking at them on my phone, I was struck by how genuine and joyful they looked. These weren't awkward fan photos with a celebrity who was just being polite. These were pictures of two people having a real conversation, laughing together, connecting over shared professional interests. I selected the best photo, one where Ryan and I were both laughing, with the beautiful gala backdrop behind us, and crafted a caption that felt authentic to my experience without being overly detailed about my family situation. Sometimes the best Christmas celebrations are the ones you create for yourself. Grateful for an incredible evening supporting children's literacy programs and meeting amazing people who are passionate about storytelling and creativity. Here's to choosing joy and surrounding yourself with people who celebrate your dreams, rather than trying to diminish them. I tagged Ryan's official Instagram account and added hashtags related to the charity event and Christmas in Los Angeles. Then I posted it, set my phone aside, and continued enjoying my peaceful Christmas morning without immediately checking for responses. The rest of Christmas Day unfolded beautifully. I spent the morning exploring more of Los Angeles, walking through neighborhoods I'd never seen before, and marveling at how different Christmas looked in a place where palm trees were decorated with lights and people were wearing shorts and flip-flops to holiday gatherings. Everything felt fresh and new, completely removed from the familiar traditions I'd grown up with. For lunch, I found a small cafe that was open on Christmas Day, clearly catering to other people who were spending the holiday away from traditional family celebrations. The other customers were an interesting mix. Some tourists like myself, some locals who seemed to be choosing alternative holiday experiences, and some people who appeared to be working in the entertainment industry and treating Christmas as just another day in their busy schedules. I struck up a conversation with a woman at the table next to me, who turned out to be a screenwriter from New York, also spending Christmas alone in Los Angeles while working on a project. We ended up talking for over an hour about creative careers, the challenges of building professional success in unconventional fields, and the freedom that comes with designing your own life rather than following predetermined paths. "You know, what I love most about Los Angeles," she said as our conversation was winding down, "it's full of people who decided that the conventional way of doing things wasn't going to work for them, so they came here to create something different. There's something really powerful about being in a place where ambition and creativity are celebrated rather than seen as character flaws." Her words resonated deeply with my recent experiences. For the first time in months, I was in an environment where my professional choices and independent lifestyle were seen as assets rather than problems to be managed or corrected. That afternoon, I decided to check my Instagram post to see how people had responded. What I found completely exceeded my expectations. The post had received over 200 likes and dozens of comments, which was significantly more engagement than my posts typically received. But more surprising was the fact that Ryan Reynolds had not only liked the post, but had also left a comment. "Had such a great time talking with you about storytelling and audience engagement. Looking forward to working together in the new year. You're going to do amazing things." His comment had sparked additional engagement from his followers, many of whom were asking about my work and expressing interest in my perspective on digital marketing and content creation. Several other people from the gala had also commented, including Maria Santos, the television producer I'd connected with, who had written, "So wonderful meeting you. Can't wait to explore collaboration opportunities." But the responses that surprised me most were from people in my own network. Friends from college, former co-workers, and even some professional contacts in Minneapolis were commenting with excitement about my Hollywood networking success. Several people mentioned that they'd had no idea I was in Los Angeles and were impressed by my adventurous Christmas celebration. The positive response to my post felt validating in a way I hadn't expected. It wasn't just that people were excited about my celebrity encounter. They were genuinely supportive of my decision to create my own Christmas experience and pursue professional opportunities outside of my usual environment. The contrast with my family's reaction to my unconventional choices was stark and telling. Around 4 p.m., my phone started buzzing with notifications from our family group chat. I'd been so focused on enjoying my Los Angeles experience that I'd forgotten my family even existed for most of the day. But apparently, someone had discovered my Instagram post. The first message was from Emma. "Sophia, is that really Ryan Reynolds?" This was followed immediately by a flurry of messages from other family members, each more shocked and excited than the last. Michael wrote, "How the hell did you meet Ryan Reynolds? Where are you?" Mom chimed in with, "Sophia Marie. Carter, you need to call me immediately. What is happening in this photo?" Even Dad, who rarely participated in group chat conversations, had sent a message. "Honey, is this real? Are you in Hollywood?" The barrage of messages continued for several minutes, with each family member expressing various combinations of shock, excitement, confusion, and demand for immediate explanations. The contrast between their sudden intense interest in my whereabouts and their previous weeks of deception and exclusion was almost comical. Finally, Jennifer, who had never initiated contact with me directly, sent a message that perfectly captured the absurdity of the situation. "Sophia, my entire family is obsessed with Ryan Reynolds. My dad has seen Deadpool literally 15 times. Can you get autographs?" I stared at my phone, watching message after message pour in from people who had spent the last month planning a Christmas celebration specifically designed to exclude me. Now that they'd discovered I was having an incredible holiday experience with their collective celebrity crush, suddenly I was the most important and interesting person in the family. The irony was absolutely perfect. The same people who had deemed me too inappropriate and unconventional for their Christmas plans were now desperately trying to connect with me because my inappropriate and unconventional choices had led me to exactly the kind of experience they could only dream about. I decided not to respond to the group chat immediately. Instead, I screenshot the flood of messages and sent them to Alicia with the caption, "This is my family discovering that I'm in LA with Ryan Reynolds after they excluded me from Christmas for being too unconventional." Her response was immediate, and exactly what I needed to hear. The audacity. Don't you dare respond to them until you're good and ready. Let them sit with their bad choices for a while. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at a beautiful restaurant in Beverly Hills, celebrating my incredible Christmas day and reflecting on how dramatically my life had changed in just 48 hours. 2 days ago, I had been the excluded family member, sitting alone in my Minneapolis apartment and trying to figure out how to cope with my family's rejection. Now I was in Los Angeles, having professional conversations with A-list celebrities and receiving business opportunities that could change the trajectory of my entire career. As I sat at dinner, my phone continued buzzing with family messages, but I kept it face down on the table and ignored the notifications. This was my time, my celebration, my victory. I wasn't ready to share it with people who had forfeited their right to be part of my holiday experience. The next morning, December 26th, I woke up to find that my Instagram post had gained even more traction overnight. Ryan Reynolds had shared it to his Instagram story with the caption, "Met this brilliant content strategist at a charity event. Can't wait to work together." His story had been viewed by millions of his followers, and my own follower count had increased by several hundred people overnight. More importantly, I had received dozens of direct messages from marketing professionals, entertainment industry workers, and creative entrepreneurs who were interested in connecting with me professionally. Several people had mentioned specific projects they were working on that might benefit from my expertise, and a few had even suggested potential job opportunities in Los Angeles. The professional opportunities emerging from one evening at a charity gala were beyond anything I could have imagined. In less than 3 days, I had gone from being unemployable by my family's standards to being actively recruited by successful professionals in one of the most competitive industries in the world. My family's group chat messages had continued throughout the night and into the morning. By the time I checked my phone, there were over 30 unread messages ranging from desperate pleas for information to attempts at casual conversation to outright demands that I explain my Los Angeles trip immediately. Michael had sent several messages that perfectly illustrated the family's shifted perspective. "Sophia, I can't believe you're in LA with Ryan Reynolds and didn't tell anyone. This is incredible. How long are you staying? Can you meet other celebrities? Jennifer's family is going crazy about this. They want to know everything. The message that bothered me most came from Mom. "Sweetheart, we're all so excited about your Hollywood adventure. We had no idea you had these kinds of connections. Why didn't you tell us you were planning this trip? We could have helped you prepare or given you suggestions for things to do in Los Angeles." The casual rewriting of history was breathtaking. Suddenly, my trip to Los Angeles was a Hollywood adventure that they were excited about, rather, than the desperate escape plan of a daughter they had deliberately excluded from their family celebration. The suggestion that they could have helped me prepare was particularly galling, considering that they had been actively deceiving me about their own travel plans for weeks. I realized that this was a crucial moment in redefining my relationship with my family. I could respond immediately, eagerly sharing details about my experience and allowing them to vicariously enjoy my success while continuing to ignore their treatment of me. Or I could maintain my boundaries and respond from a position of strength rather than the people-pleasing patterns that had enabled their exclusion in the first place. I decided to craft a single response to the group chat that acknowledged their messages without rewarding their sudden interest or excusing their previous behavior. "Thanks for all the messages. I'm having a wonderful time in Los Angeles. I'll catch up with everyone when I'm back in Minneapolis." The response was polite, but distant, giving them no additional information and making it clear that I wasn't going to drop everything to satisfy their curiosity just because they were suddenly interested in my life. The reaction to my brief message was immediate and telling. Within minutes, I received individual calls from Mom, Michael, and Emma, all of which I let go to voicemail. Then came individual text messages from each of them, asking more detailed questions and expressing various levels of hurt that I wasn't being more forthcoming about my amazing adventure. Emma's individual message was particularly revealing. "Sophia, why are you being so weird about this? We're excited for you. Can't you just tell us what happened and how you met him? This is literally the coolest thing that's ever happened to anyone in our family." The fact that my family considered meeting Ryan Reynolds the coolest thing that's ever happened to anyone in our family, while simultaneously having excluded me from the family Christmas celebration, showed exactly how skewed their priorities had become. My worth as a family member was apparently contingent on my ability to provide them with vicarious celebrity encounters and social media bragging rights. Michael's message attempted a different approach. "Soph, I know things have been weird lately, with Christmas planning and everything, but this is really exciting news. Jennifer's family is incredibly impressed, and I think this could actually help with some of the concerns they had about our family's, professional connections and social standing. Can we talk about how this happened?" The message was revealing in multiple ways. First, it confirmed that Jennifer's family had indeed been judging our family's professional connections and social standing, which had apparently been part of the reason for my exclusion. Second, it suggested that my celebrity encounter could now be used to rehabilitate our family's reputation in Jennifer's family's eyes. Third, it made it clear that Michael was still prioritizing Jennifer's family's approval over his own sister's feelings. Mom's individual message was the most emotionally manipulative. "Sophia, I can hear in your message that you're upset with us about Christmas, and I understand that. But this is such wonderful news, and we're so proud of you. Can't we put aside our differences and celebrate this amazing opportunity together? Family should be able to share these special moments." The suggestion that we should put aside our differences and that family should be able to share these special moments was particularly ironic coming from someone who had actively chosen to exclude me from sharing the most important family moment of the year. But the message also revealed how my family was interpreting my Los Angeles success, not as evidence that their judgment of my lifestyle had been wrong, but as a lucky break that we could all benefit from if I was willing to share the details. I spent the rest of December 26th enjoying my final day in Los Angeles without responding to any of my family's individual messages. I visited a few more neighborhoods, did some shopping, and had lunch with Maria Santos, the television producer I'd met at the charity gala. Our conversation reinforced my sense that there were incredible professional opportunities available if I was willing to step outside my comfort zone and pursue them aggressively. That afternoon, I received a call from Ryan Reynolds' production company. His assistant explained that Ryan had been serious about wanting to explore collaboration opportunities, and they wanted to schedule a phone call for the following week to discuss potential projects in more detail. The call was brief and professional, but it confirmed that the previous evening's conversation had been genuine business networking rather than just celebrity politeness. Flying back to Minneapolis, that evening, I felt like I was returning as a completely different person than the one who had left just 4 days earlier. I had professional connections in Los Angeles, potential job opportunities in the entertainment industry, and most importantly, a completely transformed sense of my own worth and capabilities. But I was also returning to a family situation that had fundamentally changed. My family's reaction to my Los Angeles trip had revealed exactly how conditional their love and support actually were. When I was just their excluded daughter spending Christmas alone, they were comfortable maintaining their deception and enjoying their mountain retreat without me. But when I became someone who could provide them with celebrity connections and social media bragging rights, suddenly I was the most important and interesting person in the family. The plane touched down in Minneapolis around 11 p.m., and I took a taxi back to my apartment through the snowy streets that felt impossibly small and constrained after 4 days in Los Angeles. My apartment looked exactly the same as when I'd left, but I felt like I was seeing it through completely different eyes. The Christmas decorations I'd put up while planning for a family celebration that was never going to include me now seemed like artifacts from a different lifetime. I had one more day before I needed to return to work, and I knew that I needed to decide how to handle my family situation. The group chat had been relatively quiet during my travel day, but I knew that my family would expect some kind of detailed debrief now that I was back in Minneapolis. They would want to hear about every conversation with Ryan Reynolds, see every photo from the charity gala, and probably ask for introductions or favors that would benefit their own social standing. The challenge was going to be maintaining my boundaries and self-respect while navigating their sudden interest in my life. For the first time in my relationship with my family, I held the power in our dynamic. They wanted something from me. Access to my celebrity connections and validation of their vicarious success, and I had the choice of whether or not to provide it. As I fell asleep in my own bed for the first time in 4 days, I realized that my Christmas exclusion had given me something I'd never had before: leverage. My family's rejection had forced me to create my own amazing experience, and now they were desperate to be part of it. The question was whether I was going to use that leverage to demand better treatment, or whether I was going to fall back into old patterns of accommodation and people-pleasing. The next morning would bring the first real test of how much I had actually changed during my transformative Christmas in Los Angeles. The next morning, I woke up in my Minneapolis apartment to 17 missed calls and 43 unread text messages. My phone had been buzzing throughout the night as my family became increasingly desperate for information about my Los Angeles experience. The contrast between their sudden, overwhelming interest in my life and their previous weeks of deception was almost comical. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through the messages while snow fell outside my window. The Minnesota winter felt particularly harsh after 4 days of California sunshine, but more than that, my entire perspective on my life here had shifted dramatically. My apartment, my routine, my social circle, everything felt smaller and more constrained than it had just a week ago. The family messages ranged from casual attempts at conversation to increasingly frantic demands for details. Mom had sent 6 separate messages overnight, each one more emotionally manipulative than the last. "Sophia, please call me. We need to talk about this amazing opportunity. Sweetheart, I can't sleep knowing you're upset with us. Your father and I are so proud of you, but we're worried about how you're handling all this attention. Please don't shut us out when something this wonderful is happening. Michael's messages were more direct but equally self-serving. Sophia, Jennifer's parents are asking about meeting you when you get back. They're incredibly impressed by your Hollywood connections. This could be really good for our family's reputation with the Harringtons. Can you at least tell me how long you'll be in LA? I need to know what to tell people. Emma's messages were the most revealing about how my family was processing this situation. Sophia, everyone at school is talking about your Instagram post. My friends are freaking out that my sister met Ryan Reynolds. This is literally the coolest thing that's ever happened to our family. Mom and Dad are acting like you're some kind of celebrity now. It's so weird. But it was Jennifer's messages that really showed me how dramatically the power dynamic had shifted. The same woman who had orchestrated my exclusion from Christmas because I was too unconventional for her family's standards was now desperately trying to connect with me. Sophia, I owe you a huge apology for how Christmas planning went. I had no idea you had these kinds of professional connections in Hollywood. My family would love to meet you and hear about your experience. Do you think Ryan Reynolds would be interested in any business opportunities with my father's restaurant group? The shamelessness of it was breathtaking. Jennifer had spent months convincing my family that I was inappropriate for their social circle. But now that my inappropriate lifestyle had led to celebrity connections, suddenly I was the most valuable person in the family. I decided to respond to the group chat with a single message that would address everyone's concerns without giving them the detailed information they were desperately seeking. I'm back in Minneapolis and getting caught up on work. I had a wonderful time in Los Angeles and made some great professional connections. I'll talk to everyone soon. The response was immediate and predictable. Within minutes, my phone was ringing with calls from Mom, Michael, and Emma. I let them all go to voicemail and instead called Alicia to debrief about the family situation. They're acting exactly like I predicted they would, Alicia said after I'd filled her in on the flood of messages. Now that you have something they want, suddenly you're the most important person in the family. But notice how not one of them has actually apologized for excluding you from Christmas. She was absolutely right. In all 43 messages, not a single family member had acknowledged that they had deliberately excluded me from their Christmas celebration or apologized for the weeks of deception that had preceded my Los Angeles trip. Instead, they were all focused on how my success could benefit them personally. The question is, Alicia continued, what are you going to do with this leverage? You have the power now, but only if you're willing to use it. I spent the rest of the morning thinking about what I actually wanted from this situation. Part of me was tempted to use my newfound celebrity connections to demand better treatment from my family, to make them grovel for access to Ryan Reynolds or other Hollywood contacts. But a bigger part of me realized that seeking revenge or trying to punish them would just perpetuate the same dysfunctional patterns that had led to this situation in the first place. What I really wanted was for my family to recognize that they had been wrong about me, that my unconventional career choices and independent lifestyle weren't character flaws that needed to be managed or hidden, but strengths that had led to incredible opportunities. I wanted them to see that their judgment of my worth had been completely backwards. But more than that, I wanted to maintain the sense of self-respect and empowerment that I discovered in Los Angeles. I didn't want to fall back into the people-pleasing patterns that had made me so vulnerable to their exclusion in the first place. That afternoon, I decided to visit my parents' house to have a face-to-face conversation about what had happened. I needed to address the Christmas situation directly, on my own terms, rather than letting it get buried under their excitement about my celebrity encounter. When I arrived at the house on Maple Street, both of my parents were waiting for me in the living room, clearly having prepared for this conversation. Mom jumped up immediately and tried to hug me, but I kept the interaction brief and sat down across from them rather than next to them on the couch. Sophia, Dad began, we are so proud of what you accomplished in Los Angeles. Meeting Ryan Reynolds and making those professional connections. It's incredible. We had no idea you were so well connected in the entertainment industry, Mommy added. Why didn't you ever tell us about these opportunities? The question revealed exactly how they were interpreting my Los Angeles success. They weren't seeing it as evidence that their judgment of my lifestyle had been wrong. They were seeing it as information I had been withholding from them, as if I had been secretly connected to Hollywood all along. I wasn't connected to the entertainment industry before this trip, I said clearly. I went to Los Angeles alone to a charity event because you all excluded me from Christmas. The connections I made happened because I was there, networking professionally, representing myself and my work. The room fell silent as they processed what I was saying. I could see them trying to reconcile their image of me as the excluded family member with the reality of me as someone who had created her own incredible opportunities. Sophia, Mom said carefully, we need to talk about Christmas. We handled that situation poorly, and we're sorry you felt excluded. The phrase felt excluded was telling. They still weren't acknowledging that they had actually excluded me, just that I had felt excluded. The distinction was important because it allowed them to maintain that their actions had been reasonable while my reaction had been oversensitive. I didn't feel excluded, I said firmly. I was excluded. You planned an entire Christmas celebration, behind my back, lied to me about it for weeks and included Jennifer's parents while leaving out your own daughter. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. We thought you might be happier doing your own thing. Jennifer suggested that you were always complaining about family traditions being too conventional for your lifestyle. When have I ever complained? About family traditions? I asked. I've never missed a Sunday dinner. I've never skipped a holiday celebration. I've been the one organizing most of our family activities for years. They exchanged a look that suggested they were realizing their justifications for excluding me hadn't been based on my actual behavior, but on Jennifer's interpretation of my personality. You're right, Mom said finally. We let Jennifer's opinions influence our decisions about our own family. That was wrong. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd received, but it still felt incomplete. They were acknowledging that they had made a mistake, but they weren't taking full responsibility for the impact of their actions. Do you understand why I went to Los Angeles? I asked. I wasn't trying to make you jealous or prove a point. I was trying to figure out how to have a meaningful Christmas after being excluded from my own family's celebration. We understand, Dad said, and we're so glad that trip worked out well for you. The connections you made could be really beneficial for your career. Again, they were focusing on the positive outcomes rather than acknowledging the pain that had led to those outcomes. It was clear that they were more comfortable celebrating my success than examining their own behavior. I need you to understand something, I said. The reason I was able to make those connections is because I was there as myself, the same person you decided was too unconventional for your Christmas celebration. My career, my lifestyle, my independence, these aren't things that need to be hidden or managed. They're strengths that have led to incredible opportunities. Mom nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. We were wrong to let Jennifer's family's opinions influence how we saw your choices. Speaking of Jennifer, I continued, she's been sending me messages asking for introductions to Ryan Reynolds and wondering if he'd be interested in business opportunities with her father. Do you see the irony in that? They both looked uncomfortable, clearly recognizing the hypocrisy of Jennifer's sudden interest in connecting with me after orchestrating my exclusion. What do you want from us? Dad asked directly. How can we make this right? It was a fair question, and one I'd been thinking about since returning from Los Angeles. I want you to recognize that your judgment of my lifestyle and career choices was wrong. I want you to stop treating my independence as a character flaw that needs to be corrected. And I want you to understand that including me in family events shouldn't be contingent on whether I meet other people's approval. We can do that, Mom said immediately. We were wrong about your lifestyle. What you've accomplished proves that. But I could tell they were still missing the point. My worth shouldn't be contingent on my professional success or celebrity connections, any more than it should be contingent on my conformity to traditional expectations. The goal wasn't to prove that my lifestyle was acceptable because it led to impressive outcomes. The goal was to establish that my lifestyle was acceptable because it was authentically mine. It's not about what I've accomplished, I said. It's about respecting my choices whether they lead to celebrity encounters or not. My worth as your daughter shouldn't depend on my ability to impress Jennifer's family or provide you with social media bragging rights. They both nodded, but I could see that this concept was still difficult for them to fully grasp. Their love and support had always been somewhat conditional on my ability to reflect well on the family, and changing that pattern would require more than a single conversation. Over the next hour, we talked through the Christmas situation in more detail. They explained how Jennifer had gradually convinced them that I would be uncomfortable with her family's traditional expectations, and how they had convinced themselves that excluding me was actually protecting me from a situation I wouldn't enjoy. We told ourselves we were doing what was best for everyone, Mom admitted. But really, we were taking the easy way out. It was easier to exclude you than to stand up to Jennifer's family's expectations. It was the most honest acknowledgement I'd received, and it helped me understand how the exclusion had happened. They hadn't set out to hurt me. They had made a series of small compromises that had eventually led to a major betrayal. "What happens now?" Dad asked. "With your career? Are you going to move to Los Angeles?" It was a question I'd been asking myself since returning to Minneapolis. The professional opportunities emerging from my networking in Los Angeles were significant, and several people had suggested that I would have more success in the entertainment industry if I was based in California. "I don't know yet," I said. "Honestly. I have some phone calls scheduled with production companies next week, and I need to see what opportunities might be available, but I'm definitely open to the possibility." The idea of me potentially moving to Los Angeles clearly made them nervous, probably because it would represent a level of independence and distance that they weren't prepared for. "We don't want you to move away because of what happened at Christmas," Mom said. "We want you to make that decision based on what's best for your career." "I will," I assured her. "But you need to understand that my relationship with this family has changed. I can't go back to being the person who accommodates everyone else's needs while ignoring my own." They both nodded, though I could tell they weren't entirely sure what that meant in practical terms. The conversation with my parents was emotionally exhausting but necessary. By the time I left their house, I felt like we had established a new foundation for our relationship, one that was more honest about the dynamics that had led to my exclusion, and more explicit about my expectations for how I wanted to be treated going forward. Over the next few days, I had similar conversations with Michael and Emma. Michael's conversation was particularly revealing because he was more direct about how Jennifer's influence had affected his perspective on my lifestyle. "I let Jennifer convince me that your career was unstable and that your independence was somehow problematic," he admitted. "I was so focused on impressing her family that I lost sight of what was actually important." "What's important?" I asked. "My relationship with my sister," he said immediately. "And recognizing that you've built something really impressive with your career. I should have been defending you instead of questioning your choices." Emma's conversation was different because she was younger and had been more influenced by peer pressure than by any genuine concerns about my lifestyle. "I thought it would be cool to have this fancy Christmas trip to post about on social media," she admitted. "I didn't really think about how it would feel to exclude you. I just got caught up in the excitement of the whole thing." Both conversations were helpful in understanding how the exclusion had happened, but they also reinforced my realization that my family's treatment of me had been based on superficial concerns rather than genuine understanding of who I am or what I value. The phone call with Ryan Reynolds' production company happened on a Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after I'd returned from Los Angeles. The conversation lasted for over an hour and covered several potential collaboration opportunities, ranging from social media strategy for upcoming film releases to developing original content that highlighted stories from underrepresented communities. "We're particularly interested in your perspective on authentic storytelling," the executive explained. "Ryan was impressed by your understanding of how to connect with audiences in genuine ways rather than just pushing products or manufactured content." By the end of the call, they had offered me a 6-month consulting contract that would allow me to work remotely from Minneapolis while developing content strategies for their upcoming projects. The compensation was significantly higher than what I was making with my current clients, and the creative opportunities were exactly the kind of challenge I'd been looking for. But they also mentioned that there would be additional opportunities available if I was willing to relocate to Los Angeles. "We're always looking for talented people who want to be part of our team full-time," the executive said. "If the consulting arrangement works out well, we'd love to talk about bringing you on staff." The offer was everything I could have hoped for professionally, but it also represented a major decision point about my future. Taking the consulting contract would validate my career choices and provide incredible opportunities for growth. But potentially moving to Los Angeles would mean leaving behind my family, my social circle, and the life I'd built in Minneapolis. That evening, I called Alicia to talk through the decision. "This is incredible," she said after I'd explained the offer. "You have to take it. This is exactly the kind of opportunity that could change your entire career trajectory." "I know," I said, "but it also means potentially moving away from my family right when we're starting to rebuild our relationship." "Sophia," Alicia said firmly, "your family excluded you from Christmas and then only became interested in you again when you gained access to celebrities. If they really care about your well-being, they should be encouraging you to pursue this opportunity, not making you feel guilty about it." She was right, of course. The true test of whether my family had actually learned from the Christmas situation would be how they responded to this career opportunity. I decided to share the news with my family during our next Sunday dinner. The conversation was illuminating, in terms of how much they had actually changed their perspective on my career choices. "This is amazing, Sophia," Mom said immediately. "You should absolutely take this opportunity." "Are you sure?" I asked. "It might mean moving to Los Angeles eventually. If that's what's best for your career, then that's what you should do," Dad said. "We don't want you to limit your opportunities because of family considerations." Michael was equally supportive. "This is exactly the kind of success you've been working toward. Jennifer and I both think you should pursue it aggressively." Even Emma, who had been the most resistant to acknowledging her role in the Christmas exclusion, was enthusiastic about the opportunity. "This is so cool. You're basically going to be working in Hollywood now." Their support felt genuine, but I also recognized that it was easier for them to be supportive now that my career success reflected well on the family. The real test would come if I ever faced professional setbacks or made choices that didn't align with their expectations. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my Minneapolis apartment, having just finished my first week of consulting work for Ryan Reynolds' production company. The projects were challenging and creative, exactly the kind of work I'd been hoping to do. But more importantly, I was working with people who valued my perspective and trusted my professional judgment. My relationship with my family had stabilized into something that felt more honest and respectful than it had been before the Christmas incident. They were making genuine efforts to support my career choices and include me in family decisions, though I could tell they were still adjusting to the idea of me as an independent adult with her own priorities and boundaries. The biggest change was in how I saw myself. The experience of being excluded from Christmas and then creating my own incredible holiday celebration had taught me that my worth wasn't dependent on other people's approval or inclusion. I had learned to value myself enough to pursue opportunities that aligned with my goals. even when those opportunities required me to step outside my comfort zone or challenge other people's expectations. Jennifer had continued reaching out periodically, asking for introductions to my Hollywood connections, and suggesting various business opportunities that her family might be interested in pursuing. I had politely declined all of these requests, recognizing that she was still trying to benefit from my success without acknowledging her role in my exclusion. But the most important outcome of the entire experience was the realization that I had the power to create my own opportunities and define my own worth. Being excluded from my family's Christmas celebration had been painful, but it had also forced me to discover strengths and capabilities I hadn't known I possessed. 6 months later, I was offered a full-time position with Ryan Reynolds Production Company in Los Angeles. The offer included a significant salary increase, equity in the company, and the opportunity to develop original content that would reach millions of people around the world. I accepted the position and moved to Los Angeles in late summer. My family was supportive of the decision, though I could tell they were still processing the reality of me living so far away. But by then, our relationship had evolved to the point where they were genuinely proud of my success, rather than just interested in how it could benefit them. The Christmas exclusion that had felt like the end of the world had actually been the beginning of a completely new chapter in my life. Sometimes the most painful rejections are actually redirections towards something better than we could have imagined. And sometimes the people who exclude us are doing us a favor by forcing us to discover our own strength and create our own opportunities. My family learned that their judgment of my worth had been completely backwards. My independence and unconventional career choices weren't character flaws that needed to be corrected. They were exactly the qualities that had led to my greatest successes. And I learned that I didn't need anyone's permission to live an extraordinary life. The best revenge, it turned out, wasn't proving them wrong. It was proving myself right. 2 years have passed since that life-changing Christmas in Los Angeles, and as I write this from my corner office in a Santa Monica production studio, I can hardly believe how completely my world has transformed. The view from my window shows palm trees swaying in the ocean breeze, a sight that still amazes me every morning when I arrive at work. The girl who was once excluded from her own family's Christmas celebration has become the head of digital strategy at one of Hollywood's most innovative production companies. The journey from that devastating December morning in Minneapolis to this moment hasn't always been smooth, but every challenge has reinforced the lesson I learned during those 4 days in Los Angeles. When you stop waiting for other people's approval and start creating your own opportunities, incredible things become possible. My first year working remotely for Ryan's company exceeded everyone's expectations, including my own. The projects I developed reached audiences in ways that traditional marketing approaches never could have achieved. We created campaigns that felt authentic because they were rooted in genuine storytelling rather than manufactured hype. The success of those campaigns led to industry recognition, award nominations, and most importantly, the trust of executives who were willing to give me increasingly significant responsibilities. But the real validation came from seeing how my unconventional background actually enhanced my work rather than limiting it. My experience as someone who had felt excluded and misunderstood gave me insight into audiences who were often overlooked by mainstream entertainment marketing. I understood how to connect with people who felt like outsiders, who were creating their own paths, who needed to see themselves represented in authentic ways. The move to Los Angeles happened naturally, almost inevitably. After 8 months of remote consulting, Ryan's company offered me the director position, with the caveat that I would need to be based in California to manage the growing team and handle the increasing client demands. The decision to accept wasn't difficult. The professional opportunity was extraordinary, and I had fallen in love with the creative energy and possibilities that Los Angeles represented. My family's reaction to my permanent relocation was more complex than I had anticipated. They were genuinely proud of my success and supportive of my career advancement, but they also struggled with the reality of having me so far away. The distance meant that our relationship would have to be maintained through phone calls, video chats, and occasional visits, rather than the regular Sunday dinners and spontaneous get-togethers that had previously defined our family dynamic. Mom cried when I told them about the permanent move, but her tears were mixed with pride rather than just sadness. "I'm so happy for you, sweetheart," she said during our last Sunday dinner before I left Minneapolis. "You've built something amazing, and you deserve every bit of this success. I just wish we hadn't had to learn how extraordinary you are by almost losing you." Dad's response was characteristically direct but emotionally honest. "We failed you during that Christmas situation," he said. "We let other people's opinions matter more than our own daughter's feelings. But watching what you've accomplished since then has taught us something important about recognizing strength and independence instead of trying to contain it." Michael and Jennifer's relationship had evolved significantly during the 2 years since the Christmas exclusion incident. Jennifer had gradually recognized how wrong her initial assessment of my lifestyle had been, and she had made genuine efforts to rebuild our relationship. Her family, ironically, had become some of my most enthusiastic supporters once they realized the scope of my professional success in Hollywood. "I owe you more than just an apology," Jennifer told me during a private conversation before my move to Los Angeles. "I convinced your family that you were somehow inappropriate for our Christmas celebration, but you were actually the most accomplished person in the room. My judgment was completely backwards, and I'm sorry for the pain I caused." Her acknowledgement felt sincere, and more importantly, it was accompanied by concrete changes in how she interacted with me and spoke about my career choices. She had stopped making subtle criticisms about my lifestyle and started actively supporting my professional endeavors. Emma, now in her final year of college, had perhaps changed the most of anyone in the family. The Christmas exclusion incident had forced her to examine her own values and priorities, and she had become much more thoughtful about issues of family loyalty and individual authenticity. "Watching what happened to you and how you handled it changed how I think about everything," she told me. "You showed me what it looks like to stand up for yourself with dignity instead of just accepting other people's treatment. That's the kind of person I want to be." The first Christmas after my move to Los Angeles was a test of how much our family dynamic had actually changed. Instead of assuming I would fly back to Minneapolis for the holidays, my family asked what I wanted to do and offered to accommodate my schedule and preferences. When I mentioned that I was considering spending Christmas in California to experience a different kind of holiday celebration, they didn't guilt-trip me or make me feel like I was abandoning family traditions. Instead, they surprised me by planning a family trip to Los Angeles so we could spend Christmas together in my new city. "We want to see your life there," Mom explained when she called to propose the visit. "We want to understand the world you've built for yourself." Having my family visit me in Los Angeles was revelatory for all of us. They got to see my apartment, meet my colleagues, and experience the creative environment that had become such an important part of my identity. More importantly, they got to see me in my element, confident, successful, and surrounded by people who valued my contributions. Ryan invited my family to a holiday party at his production company, where they got to meet the team I worked with and see firsthand the respect and admiration that my colleagues had for my work. Watching my parents talk with directors, producers, and actors who spoke enthusiastically about my creative vision and professional capabilities was profoundly healing for all of us. "I had no idea," Dad said afterward. "I mean, I knew you were successful, but I didn't understand the scope of what you've built or how much people in this industry respect your work." That Christmas in Los Angeles became a new family tradition, one that celebrated my success and independence rather than expecting me to conform to predetermined expectations. It was the kind of Christmas I had always wanted, inclusive, supportive, and focused on genuine connection rather than social appearances. My career continued to flourish in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark days in Minneapolis. The projects I worked on reached increasingly large audiences, and the campaigns I developed won industry awards that established my reputation as an innovative strategist. But more importantly, I was working on content that mattered, stories that represented diverse experiences, campaigns that connected with audiences who had been overlooked, projects that used entertainment to address important social issues. One project in particular felt like a full-circle moment. We developed a campaign for a film about family dynamics and the courage required to break generational patterns of conditional love. The story resonated deeply with audiences who had experienced their own family challenges, and the campaign I created focused on the theme of choosing authenticity over approval. During the campaign launch event, Ryan pulled me aside for a conversation that felt like a professional milestone. "You know," he said, "when I met you at that charity gala 2 years ago, I could tell you had incredible potential. But I don't think either of us realized how much your personal experiences would enhance your professional capabilities." He was referring to how my own journey of family exclusion and self-discovery had informed my approach to storytelling and audience engagement. My understanding of what it felt like to be excluded, misunderstood, and undervalued had made me better at creating content that connected with people who had similar experiences. "Your authenticity is what makes your work so powerful," he continued. "You're not just creating marketing campaigns. You're creating connection points for people who need to see themselves represented in genuine ways." The conversation reinforced something I had been realizing gradually over the 2 years since my Christmas exclusion. The most painful experiences in our lives often become the sources of our greatest strengths. Being rejected by my family had forced me to develop independence, resilience, and self-advocacy skills that had become essential to my professional success. But perhaps the most significant development was how my relationship with my family had evolved into something healthier and more honest than it had ever been before. The crisis of the Christmas exclusion had forced all of us to examine our assumptions about love, loyalty, and acceptance. We had learned to communicate more directly about our needs and expectations, and we had established boundaries that allowed us to support each other without sacrificing individual authenticity. Our family group chat, which had once been a source of anxiety and exclusion, became a genuine source of connection and support. Instead of surface-level pleasantries and hidden agendas, we shared real updates about our lives, offered genuine encouragement during challenges, and celebrated each other's successes without reservation. Mom started sending me articles about entertainment industry trends and asking thoughtful questions about my projects. Dad began sharing my professional achievements with his colleagues and friends, clearly proud of what I had accomplished. Michael and Jennifer regularly asked for my advice about their own career decisions, recognizing that my unconventional path had given me valuable insights about pursuing opportunities and managing professional relationships. Emma, now preparing for her own post-graduation career choices, frequently called me for advice about how to stay true to her values while navigating family expectations and societal pressures. Our conversations helped her think about her own path in ways that prioritized authenticity over approval. "You taught me that it's better to be excluded for being yourself than to be included for being someone you're not," she told me during one of our late-night phone calls. "That's going to guide how I make decisions about my career and relationships." The transformation in my family's understanding of success and worth extended beyond just their relationship with me. They began questioning other assumptions about conventional paths and traditional expectations. Mom and Dad started encouraging their students to pursue creative and unconventional career options, recognizing that success could take many different forms. Michael began making career decisions based on his own interests and values, rather than just focusing on impressing other people or meeting external expectations. Jennifer started her own small business, drawing inspiration from my example of creating something authentic rather than just following predetermined paths. The ripple effects of my Christmas exclusion and subsequent success had changed not just my life, but the entire family's perspective on what it means to support and value individual authenticity. As I reflected on the journey from that devastating December morning to this moment of professional and personal fulfillment, I realized that the Christmas exclusion had been a gift disguised as a rejection. It had forced me to discover strengths I didn't know I possessed, pursue opportunities I wouldn't have otherwise considered, and ultimately create a life that was more aligned with my authentic self than anything I could have achieved by conforming to other people's expectations. The pain of being excluded by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had been real and significant. But that pain had also been the catalyst for the most important growth and self-discovery of my life. Sometimes the people who push us away are actually pushing us towards something better than we could have imagined. My story isn't unique. There are countless people who have been excluded, undervalued, or misunderstood by their families, friends, or communities because they didn't fit conventional expectations. But what I learned during those transformative months is that exclusion doesn't have to define our worth or limit our possibilities. Sometimes it's exactly the push we need to discover who we're really meant to become. The Christmas that I wasn't invited to had led me to the Christmas Eve that changed everything. The family that excluded me had eventually learned to celebrate the very qualities they had once seen as problematic, and the career that they had once dismissed as unstable had become the foundation for opportunities they couldn't have imagined. Looking back, I wouldn't change anything about how the story unfolded. The exclusion was painful, but the empowerment that followed was worth every moment of hurt. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to us is being rejected by people who can't see our value, because it forces us to create our own opportunities with people who can. The little girl who used to accommodate everyone else's needs to maintain family harmony had grown into a woman who created her own worth and pursued her own dreams. The excluded daughter had become the successful professional that her family now looked to for inspiration and guidance. And every Christmas Eve, as I look back on that magical night in Beverly Hills when Ryan Reynolds told me I was going to do amazing things, I'm reminded that sometimes the universe has better plans for us than the ones we make for ourselves. Sometimes being excluded from one celebration is exactly what we need to create a celebration of our own authentic selves. That's the gift that rejection can give us, if we're brave enough to unwrap it and discover what's inside. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.